Upon awakening the next morning, she was greeted by the sound of her neighbor drilling holes into the ground. She found herself unable to divert her attention as her neighbor persisted with his peculiar actions. What could possibly be his motive? Was there perhaps an infestation issue at hand? She felt the temptation to uncover his motives, but witnessing him digging dirt from the ground with his bare hands only heightened her suspicion about the holes he was drilling in his yard. Typically, new neighbors would introduce themselves to their neighbors, especially their next-door neighbor. When Jill finally had the opportunity to converse with him, she found him entirely disinterested in establishing a friendship. Inquiring about his adjustment to the neighborhood and his dwelling, he merely responded with a curt "fine," omitting any mention of his peculiar garden renovations. This omission solidified her suspicion that he was concealing something. A week later, an old rusty truck arrived at the man's property, piquing Jill's curiosity further as long parcels were unloaded from the vehicle. The scale of the operation surpassed Jill's initial expectations. Could he be constructing something substantial? Large wooden planks rested on the side of his yard, prompting Jill to scrutinize them closely. However, when her vision sharpened, she found herself even more perplexed than before. The posts protruded out of the holes in an odd formation, like some kind of druid monument, which puzzled Jill and the other onlookers as the diligent man continued to work on the strange project. A young boy emerged from the house and came over to join him. "That must be his son," said Jill to the other neighbors. She never saw him playing outside or heard him making noise as young kids do. The mystery surrounding this new neighbor grew bigger and bigger. What was he up to? The neighbors were now all fascinated by what was going on in the strange man's backyard. They watched as the young boy fetched materials and tools for the man. The kid was certainly eager to help get the project done. Jill left, aggravated, with no choice but to continue to watch from afar. With the wooden posts now all upright and a huge pile of gravel that appeared in the man's yard, further confused the curious residents. It appeared that the man and his son had been working on the foundations for some kind of structure, and she was ready to start a war if it was going to ruin the aesthetics of the well-kept neighborhood. Before long, more lumber and construction materials arrived at the house, and it became clear that the man was building something ambitious. There were some new faces turning up too. But who were they? And why did he need so much help? Jill and her neighbors heard a lot of commotion coming from the yard as more laborers piled in. Before long, the structure seemed at least halfway completed. More recognizable elements of the structure started to emerge. Was it a small storage hut? It became apparent that this structure was some kind of holding space. But for what? For who? Kids were getting ready to go back to school, and the leaves were changing from green to beautiful shades of brown and red. He must not have wanted word to get out. If he was a private man, the last thing he'd want would be for his neighbors to find out about what he was doing to his backyard. Just when Jill and her neighbors thought the project was finally about to be revealed, something strange happened. The man had put away his tools and materials and covered it all up since the weather was getting colder and construction was getting harder. It looked like he would have to wait until next spring to complete his many months of work. The man needed to make accessing the pool easier. He wanted the deck to be a place of leisure, somewhere to relax and look over the pool while basking beneath the sizzling sun. So how did his DIY skills work out? The end result was something stunning. A professional contractor couldn't have done a better job. Sturdy beams held the floor in place. Seams were met perfectly, angles were carefully measured, and all edges were beveled. For decoration, they also added a set of gray and brown deck chairs and tables so they could lounge in the sun after a cool swim. A lot of people think they can nail a few boards together and knock up something like this in a few months. Doing your own construction, even small fixes around the house, can save you a ton of money. For example, a plumber costs hundreds, but replacing your own toilet pump can come in at under $50. But there's more to DIY than just saving money. It's no secret that there's a large amount of pride attached to accomplishing something yourself, especially when you get to gaze upon your creation every day. A few weeks passed, and Jill enjoyed watching all of the new additions that her neighbor had been adding to his backyard. She'd sit by her window and occasionally check up on his progress. She loved being neighborly and slept a bit sounder knowing that her neighbors were good people. But her perspective would change soon. She watched the process. He'd melt down some aluminum into a liquid, and then he'd carefully pour it into the ground. Her lovely neighbor was pouring the liquid into ant hills. She couldn't understand why someone would do something like this. Jill approached the fence and waved her neighbor over. He had a smile on his face until he saw that she clearly wasn't impressed. Her neighbor explained that what he was doing was art, but before she could think of a retort, he walked back to the ant hill and cracked it open. Jill felt melancholic at the sight of a destroyed ant nest, but things weren't as they appeared. This was a step she'd never seen before. What was he about to do to prove he was right? It was kind of like a 3D model of the passages the ants had created. However, she still couldn't shake the discomfort of what it meant for the ants. Attempting to voice her concerns again, her neighbor swiftly allayed them. He clarified that the ant hills he disturbed were consistently uninhabited, revealing that he and his son were engaged in a science project for school. He explained the necessity for a model illustrating ant behavior. It was intended for his son's junior science class, and the inventive father devised a simple method to demonstrate the intricacies of ant tunnels. Reassured by her neighbor's explanation and integrity, she felt a newfound connection. He assured her that he would appreciate someone holding him accountable if he were engaging in anything inhumane. With a smile, he accepted her offer to intervene if necessary. Their exchange fostered a bond, resolving any misunderstandings. To safeguard the privacy of those involved, certain details have been altered. Any resemblance to actual persons, places, or events, living or deceased, is entirely coincidental. Such interactions exemplify the essence of becoming good neighbors.